the hardest thing to figure out, I think what Nick will agree, is which movie comes in last place. I mean, this is going to be a true debate, an epic discussion where we're going to present research cases here, material. I have Exhibit A, Exhibit B to figure out the last movie. It's going to take a lot of time here. What do you think, Nick?
I think, man, it's just so hard to choose. We got so many good movies that I don't know if there was one that stood out. I don't know. Maybe it's the only one without a damn number in the title.
Are you hinting at the idea of the Final Destination? Because if you are, I 100% agree.
That is
This
exactly what I'm hinting at.
piece of trash goes the number 5 spot. Never,
Woohoo!
never to be seen again until the day comes where we force Nick to rewatch the movie. And that's coming.
Why do you hate me so much?
It's on the list, buddy. Maybe at that time you'll have a choice between that and Troll 2, but you're gonna rewatch one of those movies. It's coming. There will be some wager you lose, and it's gonna happen.
And you know what? I watch either. If I have to rewatch either of those movies, you're rewatching Repo: The Genetic Opera.
Why must you do this to me?
Because
You know I hate musicals, man. Come on.
Because I am an evil bastard. And you
Damn
still
you.
haven't watched Has Been Hotel either.
Maybe I have, maybe I has been not.
Trust me, you haven't, because I would have heard about it by now.
Anyways, listen, we've gotten the easy part out the way, which is part 4 is last on the list. But now we have all solid sequels that need to be ranked. Now this actually becomes a little bit of a challenge. The Final Destination series is not like other series where it's very easy to rank them. Like you just know the order. This is gonna take some doing now for our number 4 spot. I now, Nick, I'm gonna ask you this because this was what you said before the series started, before the rewatch. Before we watched the series, before Final Destination Month, you had told me that part 2 was actually your favorite.
Yes.
Now, of course, this is probably the first time you've watched all the movies sort of back to back in a month, and your thoughts on part 2 changed, huh?
Yeah, it is now on the second to last for me. Not because it's a bad movie, but it's mainly the characters. They're flat. Characters are flat, and the whole vision thing was kind of annoying to me. Now to think about
Yep.
it, but
Well, she kept getting visions like randomly at the times where it serves the plot. And the whole goose chase of the pregnant lady, spending so much time on that for that to have no payoff. I gotta kind of agree with you. I would say this part 2, before we rank it where it's gonna go, we have to at least say this. That opening sequence in part 2 is fantastic.
yeah, like
That
I
is
said,
a great opening sequence.
as I said, in my opinion, part 2 is not a bad movie. It's just characters are flat for me.
After that opening sequence, the movie has some good scenes, but the characters do fall flat. And I'm not blaming the director, but the fact that it's the same director for part 2 and part 4, and they both have the flattest characters, makes me think there's something there, but I don't know for sure. All right, then. Well, moving on to now, we're getting to the nitty gritty. We have our top 3 spots. For number 3, you know what? I think I know where this is headed because for part 3, for number 3, if I'm thinking about the ratings we gave, we both gave, well, let's see, for part 5, I gave a 3 and you gave a 2.5.
Yes.
It was pretty highly ranked, but all these final ones are highly ranked, I would say. I'm thinking part 5.
Same here.
Okay.
And
Basically, all good. Just the characters not as strong for me, but
not as strong, and I'm not a big fan of the CGI we got in the movie. It definitely brought the tone down for me. So,
yeah. Yeah, the CGI, it came out at a time where like CGI was like being maybe overused, I would say, and it wasn't really perfected. So some of the death scenes look like cartoons sometimes when you have the over CGI, and also trying to satisfy the 3D audience, I think hurt both 4 and 5 a little bit. But all that said, we both like part 5 a lot, and it's a solid movie with definitely going to prevent me from ever getting any kind of eye surgery. So,
alrighty.
all right, now Number 2, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Nightmare on Elm Street series where
Uh,
you get down to part 1 and 3, Dream Warriors in the first one, and, like,
mhm.
it's like an even split, like, some people will rank the first one, but a lot of people like Dream Warriors more than the first one. This reminds me of that heavily.
Well, if I remember correctly, I believe I ranked the first one as my top favorite, whereas 3 was my second favorite because I preferred the more horror route the first one
Mm.
went with, even though part 3 was a near perfect movie. But
Yeah, I think as I've rewatched the series over and over again now, I would say I've seen the first one the most often. I just think that Devon Sawa's character Alex, he's the most invested in of all the movies, he's, like, the most emotionally invested in what's going on. Like, he's really he looks like he's having a panic attack in every scene almost. So, he's putting more into his performance, and I think, Mary Beth Winstead in part 3, I think, was the second on top of that, and the rest of them, I feel like, were more laid back a little bit. So, I think Devon Sawa's performance is what gets me higher on part 1. But again, I like both of them almost equally. Like, I don't have anything against part 3. Part 3 is a fantastic movie also.
yeah, so from the sound of what you were just saying, you're putting 3 as 2 and 1 as 1. For me, I'm flipping that
Okay.
because it's mainly the fact that Death's design just does, even though it does have some really good scenes in it, Death's design does not feel legitimate just yet. Like I said, I feel like part 2 actually kind of perfected the formula. Part 3 just gave us better characters than part 2 did.
Yeah.
And I also kind of agree with part 3 gave us better side characters, I would say, than part 1 did. Whereas I do prefer Devon Sawa over Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think I prefer the majority of the cast in part 3.
I see. I would say opposite. For me, I think I like the supporting characters in part 1 better. I would have liked part 1 to go with the alternate ending that they had actually, but,
uh, that's
um
fair. But another thing I liked was Death feels more like a character in part 3 than 1. And also, remember, part 3, Death just seemed to really be sadistic in part 3 with waiting until our main character was in front of the characters before actually killing them.
hmm. See, I think I go with the original Summon too. I think I like that by part 3, they had introduced more comedy into the movie also, and I think part 1 plays it all very straight, like straight horror, whereas by part 3, there was some comedic moments that are fine. The rest of the series became a little bit more like that, comedic moments, but I think the first one, I appreciate that it, like, played it for straight horror. So, okay, here's what we'll do with this. We're both, kinda conflicted on it. We're gonna have a little 1A, 1B scenario
Hmm.
where they both overlay part 1 and 2 for our rankings because at that point, it's whatever your preference is. I think from our poll results, part 5, believe it or not, amongst the fans seemed to be the most liked, which we both like part 5, but man, I can't put it above 1 and 3. But that's right, and that shows a solid series. When you can't really pick the top spot confidently, that shows a very solid series.
Especially if the person you're doing this with is still able to defend their point of view and not change it.
Oh yeah, for sure. We will not be peer pressured by each other or the fans who may want part 5 to be number 1. And we do have to apologize to the 2 people in Toledo who in our poll had voted part 4 as their favorite in the series.
I'm just wondering what drugs they were on. I kind of want it next time I watch part 4.
Well, that's gonna come sooner than you think, buddy. So,
Just make
uh,
sure something like a good popcorn with a good amount of weed butter is involved.
yeah, well, okay. So there you have it, folks. Our Final Destination rankings. That's gonna end off Final Destination month for us. And we don't know what the next series we're gonna do is. I imagine we'll do Child's Play at some point this year for sure.
I mean, I just
But yeah,
bought the series and I still haven't watched it yet.
and that'll be fun because Nick is not that familiar with Child's Play as a series, so that'll be fun to get his thoughts too. Being the first time we'll see some of those. So
So, as always, y'all don't have to go home. Y'all do have to go in the comment section and tell us 100% how you would rank all these movies from 5 to best. And then tell me happy birthday because y'all forgot.
Happy birthday, Nick.
Thank you.